Hey everyone, welcome to day 5, week 9. This is our last day of our night theme week, and I think we had an awesome week. It's actually made me want to play more with color relationships and saturation for sure. So I've been super happy with doing this exercise. For me has given back to me, and that's the whole point of doing these week-long exercises, is to just actually take something back from everything that we're putting into painting. Today we're going to do an object. So we're going to do a nice still life and see how painting it at night actually affects it. And I think I have a cool idea for that. We're super glad to be back, and we're super happy that you guys are back with us. So we'll see you guys next week with a new theme. Thank you. Okay, this is the last painting of the week. So this is our last opportunity for this week to tackle our night theme. So just to recap, we've painted a portrait under very saturated red light. We've painted an interior where the absence of sunlight was exemplified by a very artificial, bright, cool, natural light that was actually lighting indirectly the interior of a living room that was usually lit up by a window that kind of floods in all the natural light during the day. So it was a different way of looking at something that was familiar. Third day, we painted a very vague, cool light. Then yesterday, we went for an exterior with those cool greens and purples and just very saturated blues, like a path to a saturated blue. And I think we had, it's not the purpose of these weeks, but we had ticked some of the boxes and I didn't want to repeat myself. So I went back, and I think I regard myself as an intimist painter. I think I always turn to my life, to the people that I hold dear, my friends, to the people that I've met throughout everything I've done in my life. And I decided to paint something that is very commonplace, but I thought that was very cool. And while I was painting it, I realized, okay, this is actually shifting a little bit. The reason for painting it is shifting a little bit, or what excites me about this painting is shifting while I paint it. So when I was thinking about night, I realized that we have this little oven that when you turn it on at nights, it actually gives off this light. The resistance gives off this light that is gorgeous. It's this bright, highly saturated yellow, orange, red. I remember when I see it at night, I feel it's almost menacing. It's almost like primeval, like that first moment when you encounter fire. And it's not only the fact that it emits this heat, it's also the fact that this color is among this coolness, this very cold atmosphere, and suddenly it becomes this source of heat and light. But again, it's supposed to be, because I think we associate light and heat with comfort, but this little oven, this little bit of oven, actually feels absolutely threatening and menacing. And at the beginning I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to paint the oven. I'm going to paint the object. And that is totally fine. But while I was painting it, I realized actually what I'm liking about this oven is that I find that light, that brightness enthralling. I find it, yes, menacing, but also I'm captivated by it. And I want to see if I can paint that feeling. I want to see if I can paint what that makes me feel, instead of just falling back onto what I can normally do, which is just paint an object. Have it become my subject matter and just treat it as form, treat it as this three-dimensional object that occupies a space, that is being lit up. And, I would see the opportunity to speak about these entrails that the oven has that emanate this bright saturated light. I would probably, in a way, just formalize them and say, okay, this is an exercise in value, or this is an exercise in contrast by saturation, and that's about it. But I really wanted to see if I could use my synthetic sheet, my Yupo, to see if I could push that brightness of the light, that feeling that this thing within the painting was just the source of light, which is actually super, super cool. So what I encountered very quickly is that I was trying to paint that yellow in an opaque way. I was just trying to add my most saturated colors on top of other colors in the painting. And while I was getting some results, it just wasn't enough. I really wanted to feel like this thing inside of this oven was just insanely hot, was emitting heat. To say that, to communicate that is actually hard. I would have had to control all my other values and probably tone them down and tone every bit of saturation that I would have in every hue down, just so that when I introduce my yellow-orange, which would have been my bismuth yellow plus a little bit of cad, then that would have been like this explosion of saturation, this relative explosion of saturation. But it wasn't enough. As soon as I started painting and I realized, oh God, I'm going to have to really, really tone down all the other values, I was like, no, that's not what I want to do in the painting. I still want this yellow-orange light to be among this very purple, cool atmosphere, because the coolness of that atmosphere is actually what's going to make the warmness of this light feel even warmer by comparison. So I wasn't ready to just sacrifice the atmosphere, the cool temperature of the atmosphere. So what I noticed with the paper was that, and I've been noticing this and I've been using it in the past couple of paintings, is that you can kind of stain the paper a little bit if you let the painting sit for just a couple of minutes. If you let the painting sit, it actually stains the paper. And once it stains the paper, if you lift it, and I lifted it with a palette knife in this painting, then you get the brightness of the paper just filtering through that little bit of paint that has stained the paper. And you get super, super high chroma, high saturation from that. And I was explaining on Tuesday, in our Spanish Tuesdays, that you can't really compete with the brightness of your surface filtering through your color. You really can't. I mean, you can do it by glazing, but if you are putting opaque painting down, there's nothing quite as the sensation of light that you can get with your surface, especially if it's a bright surface, and these synthetic sheets are super, super bright. You can't compete with that brightness just filtering through color. It's impossible. So when I saw that my paper, I still call it paper, my synthetic sheets could do that, I was like, okay, here's the answer. Because what I want is that feeling. I don't care about the oven. Like I didn't care if it had little buttons or handles or if I wanted to speak about the metal frame or the little door. No, it just became this thing that enclosed this kind of furnace. It was this energy that was inside this tiny little box, but the box became almost unimportant. It became irrelevant. I wanted to have, like I said, like the entrails. I wanted to speak about what was inside and how what was inside was just seeping through the outside, even if it's blocked, even if it has this glass door, it just seeps through it and it just floods all this space, and it affects this entirety of space. So that's why, and remember, in the first couple of days, I spoke about cause and effect and how it was going to be something that was important during this week. And I think this is the almost like highlight of that notion, because I really feel that if I had just painted this object, it would have been about the singularity of this object. And yes, it may have been threatening and menacing and a very scary kind of object, but it wouldn't have the idea and the sense of place, of it being a source of power that could affect space, the space that was around it. So even compositionally, I thought, okay, this is going to be a weird painting for me because I'm going to have all this space surrounding this rectangle. I'm going to have like as much space as I dedicate to the oven in the bottom part, in the lower part of the painting that I have to activate. I have to do something interesting with that space, because if not, it's not going to work. If I don't do something with that, it's just not going to work. And I realized, okay, if I am going to speak about cause and effect, that bottom part has to be important too. It just has to speak about how this heat is not contained. This heat actually permeates everything around it. This actually happens with this oven. I couldn't have kind of visualized it or predicted it before I observed it and I painted it. But I love the fact that it just gives this curve, this bit of curve. It feels like a horizon in the bottom. It just feels like it's a universe for some reason that I just love. I really like that this source of energy, once it pushes outwards, it travels this path that it's almost describing this horizon of a bigger world. I don't know. That's those are the sort of things that pop into my head when I'm painting these things. But again, I thought it was super important that I made sacrifices today, and I think that that's one of the coolest things about the painting today, and I really want to emphasize that. Sacrifices in the sense that I'm constantly attracted by texture, attracted by detail, even though I may try to simplify a detail, and I may try to find like the essence of something and just see if I can describe it or describe its nature with the fewest strokes possible, even though that is something that very much attracts me. In here, the idea of object, I had to let go. I really had to let go the notion that I was painting this three-dimensional thing. No, I was painting this feeling that is immaterial. I actually had to paint how it felt to be threatened by this light. And I don't think those things can be communicated if you just give yourself into painting the object, into saying, this painting is about an oven. If I would have looked at my painting in the end and I would have seen that I would have lost concentration and relied upon the description of the object, I would have felt it was a failure. I would have felt the painting was a failure. But no, I wanted this immaterial thing, this ethereal thing, that to me, this is a new region. This is kind of like a new feeling for me, because I think that if I would have to describe myself as a painter, I'm a painter that is attracted by form. I am enamored by form. I actually love how form can be interpreted through painting and how we can speak about space and the space form occupies by our modeling form with paint. That is my constant throughout my life. If I look at the painters that I have enjoyed throughout my career, all masters of painting form, of speaking about form. But today it was just speaking about this hotness of air, this menacing air, this hazardous atmosphere. And I guess I was at a loss as to how to do it. But in many ways, I was also like, okay, what is clear to me is that I'm going to have to emphasize some aspects and sacrifice others so that the idea can be really driven home. When you look at that painting, you know what it is about. You know exactly what it is about. And hopefully, by the contrast that I was able to generate and by keeping these hues, the saturation of both the darker purples and the saturation in all the warms, the yellow-orange, the orange-reds, the red-orange, and especially that little moment, that scraped out moment of just brilliance, not mine, but just this thing emanating brilliant light. I was super happy with that because that's what I wanted to get to. That's what was at the core of me wanting to paint this. This was a condition that was exalted by the fact that we're at night, that everything surrounding us was darkness. The perception of this oven that's turned on during the day is nothing. It's just a thing that you can put some toast in and it warms them up, and that's about it. But at night, it really feels like this ominous, powerful little object. And that's what I wanted to get to, how the nature of an object and our perception of it can just shift completely because we are at night. I actually loved painting it. I loved listening to myself and leaving it at this point instead of laboring over it. And I know that if I wanted to, I could have. And I think that that is another painting. I have to tell myself always, okay, that's probably another painting or a painting for another day. But today, I have to be faithful to wanting to communicate the idea that I wanted to communicate. And there'll be other days to paint other paintings, but today was about saying, can I paint this heat emanating and flooding this atmosphere and making it become threatening? So I was very, very happy with it. Anyways, that was painting for today. I think we had a super cool week. Again, and I love to emphasize this, these were 5 simple ways of tackling an enormous problem, a beautiful problem. They don't have to be the ways to do it. Hopefully they are the most boring ways in a sense, and you guys can make the most exciting of ways to interpret night through painting. But these were mine. What makes them special is that these were mine, and I feel completely happy by having picked these as my subject matter. So remember, next week we're going to have a whole new theme, and I think it's going to be super, super cool. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you for hanging out this week, and that's about it. Thank you. Bye.